Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Blacklist. Super excited to have The Blacklist back, especially, picking up where the winter finale left off. They did such a good job with just this story all together. I like what they did with it because it's a very, more so like, it is just a very Liz heavy episode. It's kind of reminiscent of the episode back in season 3, like after Reddington, after everyone thought like Liz was dead, like basically that episode that was all focused on him. This one cut away to other things, but I was kind of explaining like the aftermath of like the finale, but the fact is that like the episode title isn't a blacklister's name. It's just a title. It's called Ruin. Just like I think that episode with Reddington was the only other one that's done that. I could be wrong, but it's just like an isolated episode, not really dealing with blacklisters. It's just each character kind of dealing with their own trauma at the time. Him at the time dealing with Liz's death. Now like Liz dealing with Tom's death, and a lot of interesting things went down in this episode. I kind of break everything down bit by bit. First of all, I love the fact is that like her dog is named Kate. I thought that was kind of a nice touch. Sadly, the dog ended up dying. I was like, the moment that the dog, she's like, Kate, where are you? I was like, oh God, Kate is dead, isn't she? I had a feeling Colin was dead too. The moment those guys, like that dude came back without Colin, I was like, oh yeah. I was like hoping on some level, like maybe he knocked him out, I just wasn't expecting him to be in the same place as I wasn't expecting her to find Kate's body. I knew she was going to find Colin's. Didn't expect her to find Kate's body and then Colin's. I was like, that sus. But, that really doubly hurts because it's like, can no one named Kate live in this show? It's just like, oh, that sucks too, because that was such a good dog too. It turns out these guys that are with her are people from a crime family, and the guy they're after is this guy. He was a guy that was informing on this particular crime family. His name was Mike. But from the very beginning, Liz is training and everything. She immediately sees through all their lies. Because you can tell, too, like, they're finishing each other. It's like, no. It's like this. Oh, like, the plane's like a mile or two away. It's like, really? I didn't hear any plane crashing like a mile or two. It's like, no. Probably more like 6 or 10. I mean, you get all turned around. They're finishing each other's thoughts. Like, oh, what someone says, they kind of correct and build upon it. So it's like, you can tell they're lying. Because of the problem with a lie. The fact is, when you lie, you kind of have to stack upon more and more and more. And they're adding different elements to it. And they have to kind of backtrack later on. Because it's like, oh, yeah, I came here hunting. And then Liz like, I thought you said you came here for fishing. I was like, I came here. It took a little while. And he's like, oh, I came here hunting a bear. They always wanted to fish. It's like, you're so full of crap, dude. Because they probably did legitimately think the place was alone. Maybe they had been watching Liz, so they probably didn't expect anything. Because, it's just this one lady. But a little did they know who they were messing with. Especially because Liz was just like, okay, letting things go. She didn't go crazy. But she lost it the moment her dog and Colin died. Which sucked because you totally know Colin had a thing for her. Because especially the way he was like, oh yeah, I'll show you around town, It's like, oh yeah, I came here to drop off your package. It's like, no, he definitely liked her. And it's just, I mean, obviously after what she's been through, she's not really all that keen to get too close to people again. Especially in this, that's the whole reason why she picked that spot, just be isolated away, just get away from everything and everyone. And definitely not about to jump into a relationship, considering like, she just lost her husband and everything. I just like what they did in this episode too, because it's just like after that, she just went off. She systematically took them down. I mean, when you break down everything she did to them, taking them all out, she did it not only by herself, she did it without even a loaded gun. Like, she found other means to take them down. That's like some Taken level stuff, because it's like, you've never seen Liz kind of like that. Like, Liz is always good, like, when it comes to, like, handling her own. That's not a question. But you've never seen her systematically take down, like, people by herself, Especially getting Billy to eat chewed up glass. And it's like, oh yeah, every time you breathe, some of those shards are going to go. That messed with me as someone who has a tendency to eat, who has a tendency to chew on ice. That got me good. I was like, oh God, don't do that. That's probably going to make me a little hesitant going forward. Just going to be in the back of my mind anytime I chew ice from now on, just because of that. Then also poison that one dude with the peanut butter. It's like, at what point in time did she poison the peanut butter, dude? That was good. It must have been at the time when she took it back, and then she probably messed with it, and then he still went after it later on anyway, so probably at that point in time. Then set one dude on fire, or technically she set the other dude on fire with the flare, and took the other dude down with the axe. Once again, systematically, and without a bullet or gun. That's pretty impressive. It's just because it's like she's already in a state of having lost people, and then you piss her off even more. She came here to be by herself to kind of, mourn what Red told her to do, and it's like you screwed up, and they picked the wrong place to kind of decide to kind of try and pull all this. I mean, to be fair, it wasn't just them. It was like a car accident, and the guy, Mike, got out and got away because he was in their trunk. So it just happened to work out like that. It never came up in the episode, but for whatever reason, there's a part of my mind that was halfway expecting at the end of the episode Red being like, yeah, I'm the one that kind of set that up. I don't know why. Of course, Red would set her up in that situation, especially because he doesn't want her getting revenge. But for her, it's like, that's all she can. That's the only thing that keeps her going is the thought of revenge. But I also appreciate the fact is when it was all said and done, the FBI, some of the like FBI investigative stuff, they're like, yo, where does the lady come from? Do you really know her? It's like, no, her name's Grace. We don't really know that much about her. Kind of kept to herself. And it's like, she left no evidence behind. And it's just like, this lady's like, someone were like, one of the guys the guy at the store was kind of like, well, she's kind of like, a ghost. And I was like, oh, that's so good. You're just like you would expect this kind of storyline out of a movie. You just wouldn't necessarily, I mean, because Red kind of went through a similar thing, but to be fair, everything that happened to Red, it was all inside of his head. But this is like I said, you've never seen Liz go all renegade like this. So it's kind of pretty badass. But what also made this episode good was because it wasn't just about her being a badass and everything. It was also about, well, really quickly, before I even get to that, there was something that was floating through my mind too. It's like, why not a lot of people know Liz's face? I guess it's just one of those things, but it's like, she was like national news because back in season 3, her and Reddington being on the run and everything, like, that's why I was kind of shocked. I was like, surprised a lot of people don't know your name. I'm surprised aren't you Liz Keene? But I guess it's one of those things, like, I guess she went off the beaten path. Not less where she was at was in Canada or something. One of the initials on one of those cops, vest had an O at the beginning. So in my mind, I was thinking like Ontario or something. Like, I don't know where she was at the beginning of the episode. But maybe she was far enough off the beaten path for it not to really register in people's mind that who she was. To be fair, it was a couple years ago, it's just how news is in some people's minds, that some things like that kind of tend to fade away, especially because she was cleared and everything. So maybe it kind of made it less impactful. Plus, no, because even when she was on the run, she had blonde hair, but still, like, all the photos were of her, like, with her hair, her natural brunette color. So I don't know. That was just kind of something that's kind of floating in the back of my mind. But I guess it's one of those things where it's like, don't think about it too much, I guess. Or maybe it wasn't as national news as I make it out to be. I feel like it was, but maybe it was just kind of local enough news to be like, I mean, considering the whole situation, it was pretty high priority. So I don't know. Nevertheless, like I said, maybe because it kind of all got pushed under the rug and everything, like, oh, her name got cleared and everything, so it's no longer an issue. But it's also interesting because the FBI is investigating, and it's like, oh, because I doubt even the team knows the fact is that Liz was involved in all of that and everything, So I'm curious, though. That was just kind of interesting to me. It could have easily been like a different FBI, definitely a different FBI field office that was, took the case and everything, so. Because at first they're like, oh, she must be someone that's trained by a professional cleaner to be able to handle things like that. It's like, no, she's one of you, so she knows not to leave any traces behind because she doesn't want, because it'll get complicated. It's like, oh, like a FBI agent kind of went rogue and did something like that. It's just, she didn't want anyone from from the team getting word of it and trying to track her down or something like that too. So there's that. But yeah, getting back to what I was talking about earlier, I kind of went off book here a little bit, so I do apologize. One big thing was like, okay, what happens with the whole Agnes situation? It's like, who did you leave Agnes to? Lo and behold, Scotty Hargrave. Even like Reggie's like, really? Scotty? Especially after she tried to kill you on your wedding day? It's like, no, she didn't know it was me and Tom. So it doesn't make that any less, still awkward, but nevertheless, understandable. But, I did like the fact is, and it's something I kind of brought up at the beginning of the season with the whole Tom situation of like, they're just going to probably allude to some of the stuff that happens. It's like, basically, even though the show got canceled after its first season, that basically the entirety of like, probably like the ideas that they had for future, Blacklist Redemption are right there. They add them in because even like, because I was like, oh, because Scotty's out of jail. Cause remember, Redemption ended with her being in jail. And then it was like, Then Tom found out about the whole, like, his dad actually being the one behind everything. But then, like, in this they go, yeah, Tom had to do the toughest thing, and that was testify against his dad. I was like, wow. Once again, it's just like they literally reference it. I figured they would. It's like they make references to redemption because it's just the story that we never get to see. Which just made the question, like, would we ever get to see any characters from Redemption return to the Blacklist? Like Solomon, for example, especially how tight Solomon and Scotty are. So I don't know why I said it like that. Are. So I am curious, like, whether something will come about that or not. We'll just kind of have to wait and see. But like, this might be the furthest extent they go with it, because this might be their way of kind of closing certain chapters. Like, well, closing out Tom's chapter the way they did. Now they're closing out the rest of like that story, like at least giving you some satisfactory, knowing like, oh, it played out like this. So, but I doubt like any of that story will kind of play its role in this. It's like, no, that was kind of all going to be redemption. So now you get some idea of how it would have ended. Well, probably like ideas of what we have for the future for it, but that's probably the fullest extent. So it is kind of interesting, because even Liz kind of meant, she's like, you out of anyone should be just as sad and angry as me. But it's like, for Scotty, it's like she dealt with this, which she didn't deal with it. She always had this sadness and anger since like Tom disappeared. So she's had it for like 30 years. And having Tom come back in her life and everything, I'm assuming everything ended off positively because she's out of jail and she's here taking care of Agnes. And, obviously, like, Tom's dad's actually in jail now and everything. So, like, obviously they made up, we can, I guess, imagine that they spent a lot of time kind of catching up and everything before he came back home and everything. So, which would technically be him coming back home at the end of season 4 with the whole finale, picking up, Suitcase from Cade. So, but like Tom coming back in her life was a blessing. So like, I think it eased some of that pain. Like, she thought he was gone for like the past 30 years, but now it's like, oh, he's back in my life. And even, I think it doesn't make it any easier, but the blow isn't as heavy as it could have been. It's still got to suck because he just came back into your life and you lost him again. So that, and this time for real, there's no, oh, he's going to walk through that door and be okay things. Even though there's part of me that's still idiotically hoping, but not at this point in time, so. It's crazy how much that Liz has to deal with. Like, she has to deal with her sadness and her anger. Agnes, she didn't even want to be around Agnes like that, because it's like, Agnes is to that point, like, she can feel and understand and probably see the sadness in Liz's eyes. And she doesn't want that, her daughter to see her like that, especially because all she has on her mind right now is getting revenge for the people that killed Tom. And then, that's not the type of environment she wants her little girl to be around. It's like, well, live over with Scotty, and rather than Red, it's like, yeah, you looked after her for those 10 months I was in a coma and everything. But it's like, still not the best person to leave my child around just because of your world and everything. So, but also interesting too, because she was like, Red, keep working with the task force with the Blacklist. She's like, I know you have your own motives for doing it. Like, it might benefit you in some shape or form. You have your own reasons for doing it, but still, thank you. And it almost seems like there's a moment where you see Red kind of almost like swallowing it like a sour pill, because it's just like, I think her being thankful for him, it hits him hard. Because once again, I brought this up during the winter finale. The fact of the matter is, Red's the main reason why Tom is dead. If he had come clean about this whole like suitcase situation, the bones, then maybe none of this could have all been prevented. The only reason why Tom was doing this behind anyone's back is because he was trying to, because he knew if he went to Liz about it, then Liz might defend Reddington in the whole situation, and Reddington might try and bury the whole. He just didn't want Reddington to continue lying to Liz, especially if he wants to try and be in her life. It's like, Liz is good. She doesn't need you dragging her down with everything that is you and your world. Because the fact of the matter is, we've seen it bits and pieces like throughout the season so far, that Liz is slowly turning a little bit into Reddington, especially the way she handled that situation. Like, I'm definitely seeing the Reddington there, as well as just like even points in the past where she's like, oh, I'm kind of liking this. Like, oh, the way you're handling this, oh, that's, so stuff this season is definitely like lean towards that being a thing, so. And I think that guilt still hits Reddington a little bit too, because even at the end of the episode, because he asked her, like, just mourn. Promise me you'll mourn. And she said she would, but she ended up breaking her promise. She's like, I tried, but I'm sorry. Can you forgive me for breaking that promise? And he's like, I can. Can you forgive yourself? But part of me wonders, like, the fact that you see that kind of look on his face, is it because he also feels guilt because of everything? Like, once again, Liz doesn't know, like, that he's partly to blame for Tom dying. Because she knows about the people who killed Tom, but she doesn't realize it was related to that suitcase. She doesn't know anything about that, like what it was really all about, like Tom's death. So So I think I brought that up before, but I think that's going to be interesting going forward, especially when Liz finds out the truth about everything. And I think that might scare Reddington more so than anything. Like if she does find out the truth, it's probably another reason why he doesn't want her going out for revenge. Mainly just because it's like revenge leads you down a dark hole. He's like, but if you do go across that abyss, try to find a little bit of light, you know? For Reddington, even in his world of darkness, the little bit of light he's ever had in his life has been Liz, you know? So, but it's just because it's one of those things like when you get revenge, all it does is leave you empty. So all she's going to have when it's all said and done, she's still going to have that anger and sadness in her heart. It's not going to like go away. It's not going to completely fill. She's even like, oh, what's going to happen when I mourn? Am I going to have peace and tranquility? He's like, a little bit. Even he acknowledges like, it's not going to completely fix everything, but it makes things a tiny percent better. You know, a little easier, if it can make it easier at all at any slight degree, you know. So I'm just very interested to see how that all goes going forward. But he also said the line of, can you forgive yourself? Like, I didn't know whether he was interpreting that as like, well, the fact of the matter is how she feels about the whole situation. Because I left out the best part about how she handled that situation. Because she's like, oh, the fact of the matter is like, you guys, the four of you against me, this is going to be practice. I was like, that sounds like such an action movie like line of just kind of like, I'm taking you all down. Like, you know, it's like, oh, I'm not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with me, which sadly they were. And she, once again, systematically took them down. But I think, you know, for her too, it's like, oh yeah, like even if they were bad guys, it doesn't matter. Even if it was in self-defense, I still killed them. And even Red's like, you know, she's like, for right now, I don't feel anything. And he's like, I'm not going to lose any sleep over it, which Fred's like, you will eventually, you know, especially because Liz is a good person. So obviously that's going to weigh on her conscience. But I think it's like, can you forgive yourself for that? Or it might have been more so like, because she blames herself for Tom because it's like she wasn't there. She couldn't help him. She couldn't protect him. You know, she probably blames herself. So maybe that's also another way to kind of look at that forgiveness. That might have been the actual meaning of it, but I'm also feel like it can be interpreted as that too, like her not being able to mourn like she wants to, maybe forgive herself for that. Like, there's many different ways to interpret that. I feel like it's more so like the whole like Tom's death situation, like not being able to do anything about it. Maybe that's what, but nevertheless. What I am curious about is though, who is the one that was sending her files? Because it seems like those packages she was getting every once in a while were files. If anything, I assume it's Aram. Just because like because I feel like out of anyone, he'd be the most wanting to help her. Like everyone else wouldn't want to help her necessarily because it'd be like, no, they know better than anything that she'd just be out seeking revenge. But I think for her, it's just like, this is my friend. She's in pain. I want to do whatever I can to help her. Especially like she deserves to get justice for Tom. Tom deserves justice, you know. So. Wasn't always the best person all around, but at the end of the day, he was a good guy and he was very important to my friend. So I'm going to do whatever I can, you know? Because now, like, you know, Agnes has to grow up without her dad in her life. So, because I doubt it was Reddington because she even asked Reddington to not know where she was, but the fact that like not to follow her, just to kind of let her go. But I still think even after whatever, because we still don't know how much time has passed in between her coma and now, like obviously to the point like she went through physical therapy enough and stuff like that. We saw her chopping wood, so she's definitely better in that regard, and obviously hence to how she handled everything this episode. So we're not 100% clear on how much time has passed in between there, but I doubt Reddington left her alone. I'm sure Reddington always kept tabs on her. You never know who he had connections with. There's a small part of my brain, like not that Colin was working with Reddington, but I thought on some level Colin might have actually, I was like, Colin's part of this, isn't he? Because the fact is he was telling Liz, like, oh, she's like, oh, don't their stories seem a little far-fetched for you? And he's like, oh, you're just being paranoid. And I was like, part of me is like, please don't tell me Colin's a part of this. Turns out not to be the case, which maybe, I mean, it wouldn't have been better if he had been with it, because that would have sucked, but still. Just overall, a fantastic episode. I am, like I said at the very beginning, I'm glad to have the Blacklist back, and I'm so curious to see what they do going forward, because all going forward is going to be about Liz getting revenge. Also, possibly finding out the truth about Reddington and this whole situation. But as I also brought up in something else too, maybe this will bring us also one step closer to finding out whose bones are in that suitcase. So, also curious, does this mean that Liz will go back to the FBI or what? Or is she just going to be soloing this thing? She'll probably work closer with Reddington with this. I'm also curious, will we get to see any work that Reddington has done with, the task force? Because originally it was like, oh yeah, dude, he said he would, but I would think out of anything, he would keep his promises to Liz in that regard. So I'm wondering, will we get any, like, an episode kind of like reflecting that, like next time, be like, oh yeah, this is what happened between Red and the task force. These are the blacklisters they had to handle without Liz, So I'm curious. It might not be a thing. Maybe get references to it. Also curious, is that crime family going to come up later on in the season? I kind of feel like it. Well, might not, because Mike is still alive and he can testify and everything, so that might not be an issue going forward. But like I said, we're just going to have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.